Yo, Transformers, quick heads up. This show is all about inspiration and education, not medical advice. So if you are wrestling with addiction or mental health, reach out to a pro, therapist, counselor, or doc. Now, let's get transformed. What if the secret to breaking free from addiction isn't just about willpower, but rewiring your brain with faith? My guest today, Dr. Leigh, went from studying 1,000 brains to unlocking a path to freedom that will blow your mind. I'm Marcus Hart, your battle-tested brother, and on the Transform You Live show, we are going to be diving into how neuroscience and God's power can crush addiction. Stick around because this one is going to hit different. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Transform You Live show. That's Transform the Letter U Live show. Our guest today, Dr. Leigh, Dr. Trish Leigh, that is, a cognitive neuroscientist, board-certified neurofeedback specialist, and author of Mind Over Explicit Matter, Quit Porn, and Improve Intimacy Through Neuroscience. She has helped thousands rewrite their brains and rewire it as well, on top of rewriting it, from addiction using hard science and real hope. Today, we're going to be unpacking how faith and neuroscience team up to set you free. Let's welcome Dr. Trish. How's it going?
Hey, I am great. I'm so glad to be here. And I
It's
love making the connection between faith and science is one of my favorite conversations that I rarely get to do. So, in one context. So I'm totally psyched to be here.
Yeah, we try to keep science and and like the whole aspect of spirituality kind of closely knit around here. We're finding out more and more that that spirituality has a huge impact on how the brain works.
Absolutely. And I have seen it. And I'm sure we'll dive into it because in my work, I'm able to visualize how a person's brain performs. So, especially some of the people that I've worked with who have really anchored into their
Hmm.
faith and, what I always think of as kind of divine inspiration, those
Yeah.
people's brains can change faster. So, I know that to be true.
Absolutely. You're looking at a walking, living, breathing example of that. But,
Exactly.
but,
And more
but
importantly, it shows up for
yeah,
people, right? Like that's the most
yeah,
important, the outcome,
exactly.
a life transformed. So for sure.
Yeah. So what sparked you on this mission? Exactly.
A good old fashioned, necessity is the mother of invention type of thing. Is
Yeah.
that my work is focused on brain performance for a long time, and
Hmm.
what I focused primarily on was ADHD and anxiety, kind of at the two extremes of brain performance, really fast and slow, which
Yeah.
a lot of people don't know. An ADHD brain's running slower, but then someone that I care about, after a long kind of journey, I figured out that porn was impacting their anxiety, their ADHD, which
Mm.
are both arousal dysfunctions.
Yeah.
We also know that erectile dysfunction and sexual arousal dysfunction is the number one pain point for people. So when I found this out about this person in my life, I literally couldn't let it go. So I pivoted all my work to help him. And in doing so, I felt like I knew the secret that the whole rest of the world didn't know. And I made one video on YouTube. This is a true story. I've always
Uh-huh.
had a YouTube channel on brain stuff. I made one video, I put it on a different channel, and it's me saying, don't watch porn. Porn damages your brain. And then I get a notification that that video had been viewed millions of times. And I'm
Wow.
like, what? So and in the comments were people saying, make more content. This was awesome. Support the journey. And I just started making consistent content. And from there, it's become the primary aspect of my work. And then a literary agent heard my podcast and he said, have you ever considered writing a book? And I'm like, actually, I have one written. So,
It's right here.
and it is
Yeah.
amazing. And that goes
Yeah.
back to faith. When I had to sit in these blue chairs and
Hmm.
I have 5 children, so on my Google Drive was a folder that said passion project. I didn't tell
Yes.
anybody. I had been really pivoting into porn because
Mm.
I didn't even want to talk about it. I sat in those blue chairs and I'm like, porn, seriously? you know, and then I'm
Yeah.
like, am I going to show up for this call? And I'm like, you
Hmm.
know what? When you're called, if you show up, it all works out.
Yeah, you got to go when you call it.
You
And
gotta go.
yeah, and just going backwards here, you got five, I got seven, so I got you beat by two.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly. Well,
but
God bless you. You can five's a lot, seven's even
yeah,
more. So
yeah, which is why I pull my hair out every day. So
yeah. I
yeah,
know, I know how
yeah,
that goes.
but this is
Yep.
very compelling work, and and you very much in good company because a lot of our audience members suffer from anxiety and suffer from various addictions, and I
Mhm.
myself, I overcome some addictions myself, and uh, people really discount the fact that like it really does start in the brain, and and the more we can understand that and the more we can see that like this stuff really triggers some of the behaviors that like show up. I think what the work you're doing is going to definitely hit harder, and also show that God's still in the healing game. uh,
Mhm.
so going on to your book, though, it talks
Mhm.
about 1,000 EEG,
Uh-huh.
QEEG brain
Uh-huh.
scans.
Yep.
Is there a story that like you share in there that's like kind of hit hard?
Yeah. There's a few caveats, but in the book, I tell the story of that first client of mine where,
Mm,
where he was devastated and his wife made him tell me about porn. And I'm like, porn, like it wasn't on my radar.
mhm,
But, to speak to what you're talking about is that this can all be visualized. And in the book, I
yeah.
talk about the silent tsunami of not just porn proper, but explicit matter that covers, social media primarily. And I'm working on my second book, which is all about social media, not just in a hypersexualized way, but
Yeah.
in a consumeristic way, where now, it's pixels over people and
Mm,
transactions over relations. So, that silent tsunami at the core is brain dysregulation, which most people don't
yeah.
understand. Like fundamentally, once it affects them, they feel that. And so when I say it, I love what you were talking about because like it's truth. This is what I say to
Mhm,
people is you don't have to like believe me or not. This isn't a belief thing. This is an understanding thing. Once you
yeah.
understand truth, then you can move forward. So when people see that dysfunction in their brain on the qEEG, which is electroencephalogram, it looks at how your brain is using electrical energy. And this is what our brains, our minds, and our bodies run on. Once they see that, it explains everything that they're feeling and it becomes the key that can unlock, moving forward.
And no, it really begs the question about the more we get these studies, are they going to do something to reduce like how much people are getting exposed to this stuff? Um,
I think
otherwise,
so.
otherwise we're just going to keep you in business forever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. I know, and that's good and bad
yeah, that's
because I'm
good.
here
It's
to
good and
help
bad.
people, but at the same time, I wish there was a lot less people to help for sure.
Yeah.
And you're totally right. And in the book too, I talk about, I think it's going to develop the same as
Mhm.
the smoking industry.
Yeah.
So in the smoking industry, like everybody's told, and there's fake science saying that smoking is fine for you. It helps you relax.
Mhm.
But three fundamentals became true. Smoking is completely addictive. Number
Yeah.
two, it causes cancer. And number three is secondhand smoke is affecting the people that you love.
Mhm.
So porn is highly addictive and that for most people accept that, and there's a lot of science that shows that that is
Yeah.
true. In the book that I wrote, there's hundreds of scientific references. The publishing company actually made me take references out. They're like, you don't have to cite that scientifically, and I'm like, I want people to know
Yeah.
every word is true and built on science. But number two is that porn is causing erectile dysfunction. Scientific studies show it's through the roof in young men since high speed internet pornography came on the
Mhm.
scene. And then we know from a lot of science, it's destroying relationships. And we can talk about masculine vitality. I've been making a lot of videos. I have a thriving YouTube channel where I've been making more videos on how it impacts masculine vitality.
Yeah.
Men aren't graduating from college as much. They're not getting jobs that they love. They're living with their parents longer. They're not dating. Less men are getting married. Like it's destroying the fabric of what people want to create in their life ultimately.
You're definitely speaking truth to power, and I feel like you're talking to the choir here, So, I
Well,
really,
so often I am preaching to the
yeah,
choir and I'm hoping to reach the people. But to
yeah,
answer your question, like brains can be rewired. We know that through
hmm
neuroplasticity. So in my work, I show where the dysfunction is, but not to
yeah,
freak anybody out, to say, here, this is what a behavioral addiction. You can be addicted to a behavior and it can disrupt your brain performance. But once you see it, the work that I do involves advanced neuroscience technology.
hmm
And I have my own app. And in the app, I can rewire a person's brain. And it's all holistic, all natural. It doesn't put
hmm
anything in. It just capitalizes on neuroplasticity, getting the brain moving in the right direction.
I love that. So I
Mhm.
have seen folks stuck in shame cycles. Especially a lot of my comrades from the military.
Mhm.
They face some real tough hurdles. Breaking free, and
Mhm.
faith definitely can play a role
Mhm.
in how people can break free. So let's dig into how we can rewire our brains for freedom. Because you're already dropping some
Yeah.
truth bombs already,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
I
and let
want
me
I
let me
want to I
speak
want to keep you
to
cooking.
yeah. Please, yeah,
Yeah,
totally, yeah.
yeah,
I was just on Jubilee Media. It's a
yeah.
big YouTube channel. I
hmm
did a show where I debated porn performers,
Oh
and
wow,
there
I
was a
gotta find
gentleman
that one.
sitting next to
Yeah,
me, and he's like, "I'm just watching you cook," and I'm like, "That's the beauty of truth
yeah,
and
cooking.
science." But to speak to, I said, "Help me, like, serve up some sides here, my man," But anyway,
Yeah.
um, let's speak about the shame cycle for a second, because I think that's
hmm
really important. First and foremost, when a brain is using a dysregulated pattern, you're not thinking clearly, you're not
Yeah.
thinking calmly, you're not tapped into divine inspiration, you're out in the extremes, anxiety, shame. So, a lot of the feelings that you have on the inside come from the dysregulated pattern. And when I
Yeah.
work with clients, they tell me very clearly, I'm feeling better, just without doing anything else, your brain
Mhm.
performs better, you can feel better. But
Yeah.
at the same time, there's a discongruency that creates shame. Like when you're caught up in behaviors that don't reflect the person that you want to be, that can give you a lot of shame too. And there's a doctor who wrote a book. It's called Power versus Force. I think it's one of the coolest
hmm
books ever. He talks about shame being the lowest level energy that can be in a
hmm
nervous system. That's what we're dealing with. Shame is
mm
I'm bad. So I like to tell
Yeah.
people all you have to do is raise your energy a little and it raises it
Yeah.
to guilt, which don't get me wrong, I don't want you feeling guilty, but
Yeah.
guilt's the feeling of I'm doing something that I don't like and I want to do something different. That can be the first step in the upward spiral. And
I
then
like
some
that.
people really are stuck in such a habit loop, which is
Yeah.
a neuroscientific premise. They're so stuck in brain dysfunction, which gives them the behavior, which gives them the shame and makes them not focus. And they're angry and they're irritable and back to more explicit matter. So that's the feedback loop. It's called a negative feedback loop.
Yes.
And for some people, the only way out is to disrupt it and to pattern interrupt. And really, that's where my work comes in. If you're stuck in a cycle and you've tried to do it by yourself and you can't, you're like, okay, this explicit matter's not serving me anymore. It's giving me all the
Mm-hmm.
things that lady said, you know, then, and if you just can't do it, when I work with people, we start moving the brain at an unconscious level, which most people don't
Yeah.
know this can be done. Technology can it's just like a workout. It's like a workout for
hmm
your brain that can make your brain stronger and move it in the direction of optimization. From there, now you can break that loop with your mind and body because your brain's stronger. It's working better.
Yeah. Now, just going back to referencing, like, how pictured shame and guilt, how you want to rise people to the level of guilt, to make changes, to, see the mirror, I guess physically see the mirror. So I had this picture in my head of, like, someone hiding in the cave, and then, and that's shame. And then they finally come up to the surface and they realize, oh, it's light out here and I'm dirty, so let me do it,
Yes.
so
Yeah, and to speak to that,
mhm.
like just to be really clear, I don't want you to stay in guilt. I
Yeah.
love that analogy. I love that because shame is you're in the cave. Guilt is you pulled back the rock that has you in there and you can
hmm
see this isn't me. This is a
Yeah.
cave. This isn't fundamentally me. And the highest resonating energy is peace. and
Yes.
love is just below that. So like my actual goal is to help people rise to love, peace, and purpose.
Hmm.
Like that's the light when you get out of the cave fully and you're engaged in your contribution to humanity. Not only are you enjoying yourself, which is different than just being pleasure driven and seeking
Yeah.
pleasure all the time. Pleasure is just escapism. It's not joy and happiness. It's take the edge off, help me escape, help me dissociate through high levels of pleasure. But the real deal is your God-given purpose. You know
Hmm.
what it is. You have the courage to do it, even if your mother, your brother, your uncle doesn't like it. You still have the courage. Going back to the passion project, I went and I told my husband, I'm like, I am working on something I'm pretty sure you're not gonna like. I said, do you want me to tell you? And he knew he would say some negative stuff and try to shut me down. And he's like, don't tell me. And at least he had the
Yeah.
the self-awareness. But
That's
that was
right.
like in October, and on New Year's Day, I don't keep things from him. On New Year's Day, I'm like, I
Yeah.
have to tell you, because I already had some other things in motion. I'm like, I have to tell you whether you like it or not. And that's what I've been called to do. I actually was so excited, even though I take a lot of flack for it. I have a lot of people who don't enjoy my message, but that's why it's important to know its truth. But that doesn't deter me, because when this is what you are here and this is how you help people and this is how you serve, you're good with that.
Yeah. First off, I want to say you got amazing husband to be able to like realize like I don't want to put any negativity in the air, so let her do her thing.
Yeah,
Man, that's very great
it's
and
great, right? I do the
inspiring.
same thing, and I
Yeah,
talk about it in the book. We have grown out of a very codependent relationship
yeah,
into an interdependent
I love
relationship.
that.
And it's not always easy for us, but
Yeah.
like we are trying to be, we're so much better than we were in the
Hmm.
past. And we now know we are always on a journey of showing up for each other in that way.
That's
It's super
important.
important.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Now going back to like you saying that porn addiction hits the brain like drugs. Um, messing with dopamine and the prefrontal cortex. Maybe unpack that a little bit more for us, and even
Sure.
like go into how it's hijacking our God given wiring, and what's one step to fight back.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I like people to know there's an optimized brain pattern. It's been
Hmm.
identified through science. That optimized brain pattern allows you to feel calm but alert and focused basically all the time,
Yeah.
which that's the spice of life. That's our God-given natural evolutionary design. That's the marriage between science and faith. That's what we're designed to do, is to be calm, to be focused, to be able to be present, with our
Hmm.
people, to be able to serve. But when that system gets hijacked, and there's a lot of science that shows that porn hijacks it through dopamine and through opioids, painkillers. So, like when you're in a position like you're talking about in the military, you're looking for high levels of pleasure to escape and an internalized, kind of painkiller button that you can hit whenever you
Hmm.
need to take the edge off pain. We know this. So, that system, and we can mostly focus on that reward center and reward pathways. The reward center is in the midbrain.
Yeah.
That's where kind of pleasure is processed through dopamine receptors, which become desensitized,
Hmm.
fried for the easy way of understanding. When you go to high levels of dopamine from pleasure, if you're consuming porn or explicit matter, it's a super normal stimulus. It floods
Yeah.
your reward center. The reward pathways feed forward to your prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe. That's what makes us different from animals, right? Our
Hmm. Yeah.
developed brain, the neocortex it's called, but executive function skills are up there, planning, organization, focus, working memory, social skills, socialization, impulse control, judgment. So when they become desensitized, those abilities no longer are being performed in a way that they would if your brain hadn't been hijacked. And the hijacking basically makes you go back for more dopamine, because dopamine actually is characterized as the molecule of motivation more in pleasure. It motivates you back for more pleasure where you got it. And you know what that does? Now there's no pleasure seen in your work anymore.
Mm-mm.
You're off
No.
purpose. There's
Yeah.
not enough dopamine in your relationship. Satisfaction goes down. You don't want to be with your partner anymore because you want high levels of dopamine. Your hobbies don't do it for you anymore.
Right.
Life loses what it would have been for you if you didn't have that experience with porn. And that's the tragedy to me.
Yeah, it is. That's wow. That's very insightful, and I see how it kind of parallels. People with porn addiction. And how it parallels with like people who start off very polygamous, and then when they have to transition into like settling down and being with a partner, it's kind of hard to find that joy and that pleasure in just being with one person, because constantly jumping from one person to the other, is like kind of similar to like getting that quick hit from the
Yeah,
porn.
100%. And I'm
Yeah.
glad you brought it up because I actually know some of the science on polyamory, which I wouldn't even characterize it as that. But yeah, that's absolutely high levels of pleasure. It's like taking the super normal stimulus of porn
Yeah.
that's in the screen and trying to experience it in real life. And
Mhm.
when people have understanding about their behaviors in that way, they realize that's what they're trying to do. I
Yeah.
actually did a podcast with a young man. I don't remember his name. It was a long time ago, but he was talking about the difference between, being with a lot of people versus having one partner. But
Yeah.
after the journey is complete and the brain's regulated, you see you're just like a rat in the maze trying to hit as
Mhm.
many of the dopamine levers, like in the scientific studies, trying to hit that dopamine lever more, 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 more. And it's novelty seeking. It's, trying to get a three-ring circus going in terms of
Yeah.
sexual pleasure.
Yeah, and the reason I can speak to that, because I definitely struggle with that, and and I'm having um my time right now trying to like really step out more from that, and
Mhm.
I have overcome it, but yet I'm still having that trouble in my monogamous relationship currently right now, because
Mhm.
I see that like these years of just sleeping around has really caused a lot of damage to my ability to be one person, and it's a terrible thing
Yep,
that like
that
most
means your
most
brain still
men.
has it
Yeah.
means like that's a sign not to, to call you out, but you did mention
Hmm.
it first. So
Yeah.
to
I raised my hand.
to exactly. But to kind of point out like if when I work with people, if they still have like this feeling inside or,
Hmm.
a lot of times it's just fantasy. So your brain keeps
Yes.
taking you to fantasy of what you've experienced in the past or what you've seen in porn in the past or what you want to experience. When your brain calls you back to fantasy, it's because it's looking for the dopamine hit. And honestly,
Hmm.
it's not at all about the thing that it's associated with. It's about the fact that it got associated with that behavior, that person,
Yeah.
that scene, that scenario, that thing. It's what the dopamine got linked to. And
Hmm.
then if you're still experiencing it, there's still room for improvement in your brain performance pattern. And you'd be able to
Right.
see it. So the cool thing when I work with people, all my work is measurable. The qEEG at the beginning, measurable. But then the way that it works is in my app, I set a protocol specifically for what the person's brain shows me they need to get to that optimal pattern. And when I set it, every single time they do a session, there's graphs
Mhm.
and charts that show them that their brain is improving and where it started, where they are now, and how far away it is from optimal. So that's
This is
so
great.
cool because
Yeah, it is.
you always know your brain's getting better. You feel
Yeah.
it, but you can see it too in the data.
That makes so much more, sense, and it really helps when you have that visual, because we can't see it, on the outside without a brain scan of like, what's really changing, as we
Nope.
progress in our healing journey. So I think
Yeah, and
that's
it can
so
be
cool.
demotivating. You know how that
Yeah,
goes. It's kind of like weight loss, I guess, is an easy way
yeah,
to think about it.
yeah. That's a
Where
that's a
it
really
is
good.
like,
Yeah.
like if you don't feel yourself getting more fit, it's hard to keep working out. Like,
Hmm.
until finally you measure, and you
Yeah.
can lift stronger weights. Your waist has decreased. You step on the scale, you measure the metrics. I did lose 5 pounds, even though you might not feel it yet. That's what keeps you going so that you can
Yeah.
get all the way to stopping the downward spiral and creating the upward one and keep going.
Yeah, and once again, it just goes back to like that saying that like people people been kind of trained to like want those quick results, that immediate gratification, Gratification.
Gratification. Yeah, it's about, I mean,
Yeah.
absolutely, not to finish your sentence, but it's all about dopamine
Yeah.
is the molecule of instant gratification. And you're
Mm-hmm.
totally right. People have lost the ability to engage in something
Yeah.
for delayed gratification, and that's what social media has done. Social media itself is a super normal stimulus. Scrolling,
Yeah.
seeking, just
Mm-hmm.
scrolling through to find something else that might be a little bit more entertaining, that's a dopamine behavior.
Yeah.
And executive function is doing something that takes more time. You get little tiny dopamine hits on your way to the larger goal, which then gives you a bigger dopamine hit, but again, still nowhere near what porn or hypersexuality would give you.
Yeah. And damn them TikTok reels.
Yeah, exactly. I
Yes.
just I just got done
Yeah.
making a video for my YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel. I'm wearing the shirt in it where, it's like TikTok is just designed to ramp up emotional chaos.
Yeah,
So,
it
like,
is.
if you keep watching things that are doing that to your mind, you're actually miswiring your brain to want more and more of it. And that's reinforcing the neurological dysregulation that's caused in the first place. And just to expand on that, since I mentioned it, we
Mm-hmm.
know that the brain changes in the first 1 to 2 exposures. When
Yeah.
in the first exposure, if you get a lot of dopamine when you're young, because usually it's in adolescence, your brain goes, whoa, what was that? It was a ton of dopamine. I've never had this before. I now need extra dopamine to feel the
Yeah.
same way. So by the time you go back for the second exposure, you now need more dopamine than the first. And then it goes from there. That's tolerance building.
Mm-hmm.
So, you used to be able to go on TikTok for 5 minutes and feel good. Now you have to go on for 15. Or porn, especially, porn
Yeah.
escalates, and we know it's tolerance building, escalation. Now you need more frequency, more consistency, higher level of intensity of whatever you're watching or experiencing.
Amazing. That's fire, Dr. Tristan, for that insight. Thank you. So, like, your book, Mind Over Explicit Matters, it lays out
Mhm.
this 4-phase roadmap. How is
Mhm.
it helping folks break addiction and rebuild intimacy? And where can transformers grab it?
Yeah, so it's available anywhere you get books, but most easily on Amazon. You
Mhm.
can go over to my website, drtrishlee.com, and there's a tab that says book, and you can just click that, and there's a bunch of information about it there. But it's helping people to understand, the first section helps you understand all the damage.
Yeah.
And, I know I've gotten a lot of feedback from people where they read through it and they're like, I feel like you have written that book for me. Actually, some people have written in, this is a true story,
Mhm.
wanting to know who the book's about. And of course,
Mm.
I'm protecting the identity of anybody and I have their permission, but it's not the people who are emailing in. But the point is, they feel like I've just written that book about them because it's such a relatable experience. So, they read
Yeah.
through the symptoms, less relationship satisfaction, they can't find a partner, they're caught in
Mm.
isolation and escapism. They have difficulty relating with people on a social level. They're caught in that loop. But then in the next section, it's, you can unwire this. You can step away, and it starts with regulating your brain. Then I think the most exciting part is learning all the things you can do to rewire your brain. There's so many of them. Some of the
Yeah.
things are logical that people know about, like exercise, right? You
Mhm.
have to exercise, keeps your body fit, but it keeps your brain fit too. People might not understand that part, but there's a lot of things you can do that synergize. People always ask me, how long does it take for a brain to rewire? And I always say, it's not about time, it's about training. That's
Yeah.
what that rewiring does. The more you do, the faster you can rewire your brain. But then the thing that's probably going to try to derail your progress. It's stress.
Mhm.
So in the
Mhm.
hardwire section, I try to help people build the foundation of a lifestyle that is as least stressful as possible. And if you have 7 kids and having 5 kids, that's not the lifestyle. But if
Yeah.
you're in that lifestyle, then you learn how to mitigate stress.
Mhm.
I mean, honestly, with a better brain, you just show up in more peace and presence, and it's easier. And then from there, you have the courage to live the life that you want. And when stress tries to take you out, you have a toolbox of how to deal with it. That's a recipe right there. Unwire, rewire, hardwire, right
It
off into the
is.
sunset.
Yeah. And speaking of like just personal. I just want to point at those out there. What's your struggle? Transformers. Dr. Triss is bringing it. Let's make this hit home today. I definitely want to I know it kept you longer than what we talked
Yeah.
about initially. This is great conversation, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm getting so
Thanks.
much energy. I love discussing
Yeah.
conversation and topics like this. So
Yeah.
but
Me too.
but the question that I like to give you before we kind of wrap up here is picture a transformer, maybe a vet, a dad, a leader who's burned out and stuck in a secret struggle. What's one scripture or faith practice that you would recommend that they pair with your brain hats to lift them up?
Yeah. This is great because I just visited my brother-in-law over the weekend, and he and my husband were in a deep conversation about not Saint, but Thomas Aquinas, um,
Yeah.
and his Summa Theologica. So basically, this, uh, as they were discussing it, I'm like, this is what share with people that I encourage them to do. And to put it into a very simplified practice, I think if you don't have a solid morning routine that
Hmm.
includes, not only meditation time, but also reading works that feed your soul and reconnect you every single day. Because if you then go into the world, it threatens to disconnect you from that
Yeah.
divine connection and that purpose that you set out. And especially if you're engaging with social media, think about this, if you're following people, we call them influencers. Like, let's make sure the people who you're following are influencing you in the direction that you want to go.
Yes.
Because if not, you're following somebody who is influencing you in the opposite direction of your
Hmm.
goals. When you start with a solid morning routine, it anchors you into that. Like every morning I get up, I don't miss it. Like literally the house can be burning down. I'm not going to miss this morning routine because I know my ability to deal with the house burning down depends on it.
Yeah.
Is you remind yourself it's, how do I serve? Like whatever happens today, help me show up for it. Who needs to hear from me? Use all of that from inside, and don't let the world derail you, especially social media and explicit matter.
Wow. Dr. Lane, if we took everything you said on today's episode and we threw it in the cave, we'd create diamonds. So,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, we
Definitely.
have
That's,
diamonds, man. This is
yeah,
great.
I love it. I
I
love it.
really
It's so
appreciate
cool.
it. We definitely got to have you back, if you open
Yeah,
to it.
definitely. I would love to. Yeah,
Yeah.
especially dive in deeper to,
Yeah.
the new book that, of course, get the current book that's out. It's just hot
Yes.
off the press, but the new book is really looking at, how social media use disrupts your real life
Hmm.
relationships. And, I think that applies to just about everybody, unless you're being
Yeah.
super intentional. The way I talk about it is you have to be a top 1% person. If you're a transformer, you're a top 1% person. So really being careful
Yeah.
about your social media use, that's going to take you the long way.
Exactly. So tell us where we can find your podcast and how we can connect with you if we have any further questions or things that
Yeah,
we
for
want
sure.
to.
Everything's on my website.
Okay.
It's drtrishleigh.com. And if you go there and there's a link to my YouTube channel, there's over 2,000 videos that help the journey. They all have brain hack strategies to them. My podcast is there. Everything's there.
Yeah. It is so much simpler when you just like have one website where like there's
Exactly.
everything is there.
All roads lead, right? All roads
Yeah.
lead. And you can
Yeah.
go there and it takes you out to all the social media.
Yeah.
So you can go
Yeah.
there. It's easy peasy.
Exactly. I just started doing that practice this year. I might
Yeah.
as well just get a website with my name, and just put everything there.
Definitely.
Yeah. So it just made more
Definitely. Yeah.
sense.
Especially,
Yeah.
if you're on a mission, it's important.
Yeah, it
And I
is.
think it's challenging. Like, back to the journey thing real quick is that, some of it can feel like egoic, like your
Hmm.
ego, and you're looking to get props for doing so, but that's not it. You're here to serve. So you have to make
Yeah.
it easy to be able to do that and to connect with people.
Excellent. Well, Transformers, Dr. Trish Lane
Yeah.
just dropped the roadmap to freedom, faith, and neuroscience, and hand in hand. See key takeaways today: your brain can heal, shame doesn't own you, and God's got your back. Most importantly, Dr. Trish,
Yeah.
we really appreciate you, and
Of course.
those out there, make sure you do grab her book at drtrishlane.com, and make sure you subscribe to her YouTube channel, podcast, and anything else she got coming up. It's a game changer for breaking addiction and rebuilding intimacy. So start with the journey today. You can also download my free 3-minute prayer guide at marcus-hart.com to calm your soul, in addition to what Dr. Trish has to offer. And like, subscribe, comment below. What's one step you're taking to break free? Share this episode with someone who needs it. Join us again on Sunday. And till then, many blessings, peace, and lots of love.
Awesome.
I stand for what you stand for. I'm at your door like the landlord. I can see the future, yeah, I fast forward. I get on the mic and I transform. Follow me, I'm in rare form. Follow me on this world tour. The asteroid that you can't avoid.